What does successful AI adoption really look inside organizations? I asked Nina Hirota, founder and chief talent officer at Global Synergy Partner Solutions, and she shared some powerful insights. Nina is a global HR leader with a strong track record of building and leading talent strategies for Fortune 500 companies. And in this interview, she brings a unique perspective on how organizations can navigate AI adoption effectively. We talked about how HR and leadership can create a culture that embraces AI, the rise of shadow AI, and the risks of unsupervised use of AI tools across teams, how AI is changing job requirements, and more. Whether you're in marketing or leading innovation across your business, this is a must watch. Let's dive in. Hi, Nina. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and share your insights. It's a pleasure to reconnect and interview you after all these years. Can you please tell us about your experience as a global HR leader and your new project right now, diving into AI as well?
Of course. Fernanda, thank you so much for having me after all this time. It's great to be connected again. Hi, everyone. I am Nina Hirota. I am an HR leader, educator, and AI enthusiast and co-founder of Global Synergy Partner Solutions. I mean educator because I'm an adjunct professor at New York University where I teach intercultural business communication, and I'm also a member of Harvard Business Review's Advisory Council. I have been very fortunate to develop my career with Fortune 500 organizations with a market cap of up to $100 billion, workforces of 260,000 employees, and operations in over 180 countries. I didn't even know there were so many countries until I worked for the World Bank. So thank you, Fernanda, again for having me.
Thank you, Nina. AI is reshaping how businesses operate around the world. From your perspective, how can leaders and HR work together to drive AI adoption effectively?
It's such a great question. And resistance to AI often stems from two things: fear or misinformation. And I am a firm believer that they are addressed through a combination of just three things: governance, education, and context. And when it comes to governance, it is because every employee will look to their organization for guidance, for policies, to understand what is allowed, what is the purpose of adopting AI, who has access even, right? Because sometimes it requires licenses or clearance. Clarity on governance is not optional. And because AI is so new, there are lots of organizations that are still hesitating about what is their governance approach. But this is fundamental because it is really vital to help the workforce adapt and also understand what is the organization's stance and expectations around the use of AI. I also wanted to comment a bit on education because education is what really promotes the psychological safety and the confidence for workers to embrace AI. And one thing that HR can do is demystify AI through tailored learning journeys, educating the workforce about things like the foundational content, such as how to safely and productively, effectively use AI, bringing the incentive for people to become more digitally fluent. There's no stopping there. So the sooner they become more comfortable around AI and digital solutions, the greater their contribution. When it comes to resistance, part of the workforce's resistance to adopting AI is because there's still a fear that AI will take their jobs. There's that famous quote from Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who says, AI is not going to take your jobs. It is someone who knows AI that will. We are at that inflection point where AI is disrupting industries, processes, functions, all at once. There was never so much change in terms of businesses and organizations than before. And this is going fast and furious. So the disruptions are already carrying human costs. So the point of workforce resistance and fear has some foundation there because we are seeing it happen with especially white collar jobs. But it's interesting that the World Economic Forum has recently published a study where they're saying that they are estimating that about 92 million jobs may disappear over the next 5 years, disappear. But they're also very positive, saying that about 170 million jobs, new jobs, will emerge thanks to technologies. It's interesting to pay attention to that because the math is favorable to those who are keeping up with AI. And then there's the element that appeals to both the employees and the companies, which is that there's an estimated 10% gain when people adopt AI, gain in productivity. If you do the math, that represents 22 days, Fernanda, 22 days that people are saving in a year that they can use to be more strategic, to build stronger relations with their important stakeholders, to elevate the organization overall. So there's tremendous opportunity right there. The third element I mentioned was context. Instead of bringing the theory behind AI, which is just so complex because of the many strategies their organizations can adopt to bring AI into their ecosystem. What I would normally recommend is to bring AI to people's context, meaning to their day-to-day work, and start using it first as a toy, play with it a little bit, understand what it does. Then once they gain confidence, use it as a tool. Now they incorporate it into their day-to-day activities and they have an aid to be more productive. And then finally, as a teammate, because AI is evolving so fast that why not consider them as a teammate with who we can run some ideas by?
Amazing, Nina. There are so many great insights in your answer. First of all, fear and resistance. This, I think, is happening in a lot of companies worldwide. And it actually leads to my next question. A lot of leaders are just waiting to see what happens, and they don't really put policies in place. So if organizations don't allow people to use AI, they don't have guidelines and safety protocols, what happens is a lot of people start using AI on their own. There's a new term, shadow AI, that comes from shadow IT, when people used to just go and use tech and software without their IT teams having knowledge of that. What are some risks that companies are taking right now when they don't have those policies?
And another great question, because some organizations are leaving it completely open. And that prevents the understanding of who's using AI for what in the organization. Even within organizations that have policies and guardrails in place, education included, there are employees using it because either they are worried about breaking the policy or getting into trouble in the absence of clear guidelines. That's becoming more and more frequent. Kudos to the employees who are trying to keep up and apply the latest technologies. However, shadow use should be carefully managed because there's the inherent risk of leaking sensitive information, which again reinforces my point about education and governance. So imagine the following. Most models make it very clear that unless you properly configure the privacy settings in their systems, everything that you share through the chat can be used to train their models, meaning it becomes publicly available, right? So imagine this team that's working on a highly sensitive or complex project, and then someone in the team decides to analyze a document, so loads it, attaches it to the chat without properly adjusting the privacy settings. Next thing you know, it becomes public and it leaks. So to avoid things like reputational risks, ethical risks, data leaks, it's very important to ensure that there's governance in place and that people are educated about properly using tools like ChatGPT and all of these models that are out there.
Exactly. There are a lot of questions people ask when they are creating custom GPTs, for instance. It's one of the examples probably that you were thinking about. People are allowed to upload documents to train the models. There are certain documents that companies are going to allow to be uploaded. But as you mentioned, confidentiality and maybe new product launches, things like that, there's a gray area that companies are going to have to deal with shortly so they don't get into trouble down the road. There's another insight from your answer. You talked about new job positions that are arising, and jobs that are going to disappear. We are seeing a lot of job descriptions that are already changing. And I've seen lots of leaders talking about redescribing their role. Like companies are actually
Mhm.
asking their employees, help me think about your next role since it's evolving so much. How are you seeing that in your experience as a global HR leader working with all these large companies, seeing different industries, different challenges?
It's great to hear that people are already reflecting about what is changing in their jobs because, again, industries, processes, and roles are changing altogether. And it can be daunting and even create anxiety to think that, wait a minute, I studied all these years, developed myself for this one career, and you're telling me that it's not going to exist in 3 to 5 years? It can be shocking. In fact, Elon Musk says that in the future, there won't be jobs anymore. People will work if they wish to. Imagine that mindset shift because we are raised to think about our future careers. And with longevity being extended, chances are that we're going to live to 120 years old. So lots to think about how we are going to envision life in the future. Going back to your point about job descriptions, yes, indeed, they are evolving. And what I'm observing is a greater focus on adaptability, data literacy, but also, interestingly, the soft skills, the behavioral skills like critical thinking, empathy, emotional intelligence, ethical judgment, that are becoming more and more valuable as automation scales. Because if the job becomes a task, or if part of the job had a task that's now automated, we are now looking more for character. One group that they call the Forbes Business Development Council. And this is an invitation only group that meets from time to time to talk about the leadership skills or the next trends in the area. And it was interesting because last September, they launched their new list of skills. And Fernanda, of the 20 skills that they are saying are most relevant in the age of AI, just three were literally AI related. The vast majority included things like critical thinking, decision making, emotional intelligence, adaptability, flexibility, just to name a few. And to your point about new jobs, we're going to continue to see new roles emerge. We're seeing new posts for digital content creators, prompt engineers, telemedicine specialists, synthetic data scientists. These are jobs that didn't exist until a few years ago.
Yes, going back to the skills that are going to be even more valuable in the future, I think that's what people don't realize. People naturally don't like to change, and fear of change, as you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, sometimes make them get paralyzed and not move forward and maybe get overwhelmed with all this technology. But I believe that all these critical skills are going to require people to develop themselves even further, because if AI is doing daunting tasks and is helping us leverage insights, then it's our job as marketers, business leaders, to get those insights and take them even further.
100%. Welcome to the age of ongoing transformation and learning.
Exactly. Lifelong learning has never been so true. Another point that you mentioned is the importance of educating people. How are organizations dealing with this matter in terms of AI?
I think organizations are all over the place. I'm observing situations where there are pilots that organizations are conducting and looking to develop specific teams on functional skills related to AI, as well as broad efforts where organizations are subscribing to online training, for instance, LinkedIn Learning, to amplify their overall workforce knowledge and understanding of AI. And all strategies are good. But back to my earlier point, in my opinion, what works the best is really the combination of governance, education, and context, which is an area that I really think organizations are overlooking a little bit, going very broad and generic versus bringing AI to the context of the work that each person will do today. So they start seeing AI as something that's being done to them or forced to be used in the organization, but something that's actually becoming helpful and making them more productive to begin with. That's, in my opinion, the turning point where people start looking at AI and think about it as a tool and then shift to a teammate because they see the benefits of applying it.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. This also leads to my last question on some of the steps that organizations can take. You already talked a little bit about this, but I would like to dive into other tips that organizations can use to start implementing AI effectively, especially those who are just getting started, who are seeing this AI world and want to innovate, want to stay ahead, but are a little skeptical.
It's such a great point, Fernanda, because I'm observing that everybody's talking about bringing AI to their organizations. And I would take a step back, quite frankly, to first strategize around it. So I would start by aligning the AI efforts with the business priorities, as simple as that. Instead of saying everybody is using AI for this or that, stop for a moment, bring what I would call a cross functional task force with HR, IT, legal, people from the business, and talk about, okay, how is this AI strategy going to support our business priorities? Because bringing AI just for AI's sake is not really going to produce results. If you don't know where you're going, any path will do, right? Alice in the Wonderland. So the thought is conduct a real in-depth assessment of the organization to understand, okay, what's our AI readiness? What is it that we want to automate? Start with low risk activities and say, what is it that's repetitive or time consuming that we want to automate? Run a pilot first, see how that interacts or interplays with everything that happens in the organization. And then, in parallel, start educating people. This is what we're doing. This is what AI can do, especially when it comes to digital literacy and AI, ethical use of AI. And then assess if it works for them, expand. But now they are going to be expanding more confidently instead of just saying, we should do it because everybody else is.
These are such great tips. This is also something that happens with AI tools. There are so many AI tools nowadays, and people think that they need to learn them all. And my belief is similar to yours. People need to think about what their priorities are and then focus on those priorities in general, regardless of the size of the businesses. They have limited resources. So you need to
100%.
focus on your priorities and then go from there. Just like you said, implement, focus on those business goals. You test, you refine, and then you scale. Nina, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today that we haven't talked about?
We are all going through this journey together. And even among specialists, I don't know that anybody knows everything that's happening around AI. There's no going back. The genie is out of the bottle. So, how resistance, using Star Trek's analogy, resistance is futile, right? Since we know that we have to deal with it, I tend to be an optimist and look at things like, okay, this is inevitable. We are living a different time now where change is the new normal. Learning is a requirement for the remainder of our lives. So, how do we make the best out of it? And think about what can be improved. Think about it as an opportunity to continue to grow because there's no other way.
Yes, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. Great insights. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure business leaders, HR professionals, marketing professionals all over the world are going to benefit from your insights. Thank you again, and until next time.
Thank you.